All right, so we've got Delanova Star Livingston back in the studio with us, and Brian Kenworthy, a new friend from one of our local CSETI groups. And Delanova's actually in Ontario as well. We did an episode before on audio only, and we were talking about doing video. And sure enough, we screwed up the audio. It was our fault. So we decided just to jump in and do video again. So we're kind of repeating this process. Hopefully, we catch everything that we caught before, because I feel like it was a really good episode besides the audio problem. So thanks for your patience, guys, and coming back on the show. Delanova's been writing books on the radionic ships, and Brian's had lots of personal experiences himself. So we're kind of talking a lot about, UFOs and clouds and fifth dimensions and Christ consciousness and all kinds of good stuff. So welcome back to the studio, guys. Thanks.
Well, all right, Brian.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Well, I want to thank Graham and Darren for this. This is quite an opportunity because we are bringing to humanity's attention a fleet of UFOs, call them that, the radionic ships that nobody knows about, and they have reached the point where they want a disclosure made. This is outside of the government structures and so on. And Brian, I want to thank you because you're the one that set up this meet, so to speak, through, and Brian was met by running into the stuff that I'd already had up on the website and the radionic ships, and it caught his attention because he'd been doing photographs of these things for a couple of years. He was a retired railway engineer running from, if I'm right, Medicine Hat to Grimsby, Alberta, right out in the middle of the Alberta prairies with unlimited vistas. And he was noticing these clouds that were different than, they just looked too much unusual to be clouds. So he started photographing. Well, sure enough, I've got 6 of them in the website now that are just really, really good examples of what I'm going to be talking about, and I have to thank Brian for it. So he's kind of like a kingpin and all. I'm going to jump in with a little thought right at this point. Then I'm going to introduce actually what this whole thing is about. But this idea of these radionic ships, which are magnetic, they're called radionic because they radiate magnetically. You don't see the ships, but when cloud vapors move through where they're sitting, the water vapor in the clouds ionize and then take up the form of the magnetic field they're putting out. So you see the clouds, you don't see the ships. And I have the photographs from Brian, and the first photographs he started taking after seeing these things for a couple of years and years, was in 2012. I have 4 or 5 that came from somebody up in Huntsville, and it's the same thing. He'd been seeing them and started to photograph them in 2012. And I finally have somebody from Kampala, Uganda, that had picked up my stuff on the website, and he sent me a bunch of photos, of which 4 or 5 are up on the web, and his started in 2012. So, ergo, 2012 is when the button got pushed. The fact is that the radionic ships, they're called the radionic ships of the heavenly host. They've been around for thousands upon thousands of years. The biblical references of clouds, he went up in a cloud, came down from a cloud. Cloud. There's 20. If you Google clouds in the Bible, at least 20 different passages come up, and they are talking. The references are about the radionic cloud ships. These are not ships that guise themselves, hide themselves in clouds. They, in fact, make the clouds. They're actually the clouds, so to speak. They will, and I'll get into this later, they will at certain times do a cloak. They'll bring a moisture vapor around themselves so they look just like a cloud. But otherwise, it's a signature cloud structure that we're looking at. Now, this whole piece of work, I'm the wordsmith, by the way. This is not my invention. This is not my thesis. I'm not channeling any of that kind of junk. This is revelatory all the way, and I'm the wordsmith. I get the thought, or I sort of, by feeling, I'm told what it is, and I have to put it into words, and it's not easy. Sometimes it takes weeks to get the right phrasing for it, but I'm the wordsmith, so we'll go with that. But this stuff all started in, the book started in 99, and it originally came out as a book called The Revelatorium. And that expanded over the years a bit more. I put the website up for the first time in 99. I put the first book up in Amazon in about 2009. But by about 2015, it had swelled up to about 450 pages, which is too big for that kind of stuff. So I split it in half. Half of the original Revelatorium information dealt with the intelligent design of creation. This is not like a mathematical guess. This is how creation works. It's the intelligent design, starting from the very, very beginning and going all the way through to untold energies and centuries in the future. But the first book now, it's called the Revelatorium Revelations. It's now a 3-volume set. The first book is half of the original Revelatorium. It's now called The Intelligent Design of Creation. On the web, it's called designofcreation.com. The second book is the rest of the Revelatorium, which deals with how soul atoms are created, the tree of life, fountain of youth, the number of the beast, all these different factors, which are spiritual principles, not like things. And they are now in a second book, which is the other half, called the Revelatorium of Alpha and Omega. It's on the web as simply revelatorium.com. And then starting about 2.5 years ago, the buzz came through to start a third book, which was just going to be a chapter at the end of the original Revelatorium, called the Radionic Ships of the Heavenly Host. Well, it's now a 420-page book all of its own. And there's over 650 photographs from all around the world of the examples of these clouds that I'm going to show you in a couple of minutes. Nice. That's sort of the original background of this, and I'm going to throw the pitch in at the front so I can repeat it again at the end. The input, this is a revelatory piece of work for mankind, because we're now, most people know, we're into the age of Aquarius, which is a 2,000-year dispensation. During Aquarius, galactic law, full galactic law, is lowered down into mankind's consciousness, or into humanity's consciousness, where it's already underway. It started. Everybody knows that the consciousness is starting to go up. That's why. It's called in the higher spiritual circles, that whole collective body of information is called the Great Book. So the expression is now, during Aquarius, the Great Book will be opened at last, because it's been 25,000 years since the last time it was opened. Wow. And the Revelatorium and the 3-volume
Sorry, 25,000 years or 2,500? 25,000?
No, 1,000.
Like
I should have said 1,000. If I said 100, I meant wrong.
No, you said 1,000. So that's like the Great.
Well, no, it's 25,000.
Yeah.
The dispensations are 2,000-year cycles that are, lengths of time that are called dispensations, because energy is dispensed into the consciousness during that time. We have just finished the Piscean dispensation of 2,000 years. 2,000 years ago now, we've just come into the age of Aquarius. So now these new frequencies are coming in for the next 2,000. At the end of 2,000, we're facing Capricorn, which is the next one. And this is interesting. A lot of people don't know this. It's the same frequencies as the sun signs. The dispensations actually are the same frequencies, only much greater and much longer, but they're the same frequencies. They're called astrophysical, and there's only the 12 in all of creation of these frequencies. The sun signs, which are the ones that go from like Pisces, Aries, Taurus, Gemini, and so on, they clockwise through the count. The dispensations do the reverse. We went through Aries, the golden age of Greece and all that. We just finished Pisces, now we're coming into Aquarius, then we'll be into Capricorn. So because the signs are going in two different directions, the image of the fish in all astrophysical symbols is the fish swimming in both directions, because the astrophysical signs are going in both directions. So that's a little tip for people that are following that. The point of the dispensations is there are 12, because there are 12 different sun signs. So give or take a few thousand or 100,000, whatever, you got a 25,000-year cycle. The last time we were at this point was the Garden of Eden in the 5th dimension, and it defaulted. Mankind got booted back down into the 3rd dimension, and we're just coming back out of that cycle now. And at the end of Aquarius, the bottom line of creation is the 5th dimension. Throughout the rest of the creation is 900 trillion light years old. Cross. It's not 13.5 billion light years. That's not even off the back porch. It's 900 trillion light years across. It's still in diapers as far as its eventual, growth is concerned. But through all of that creation, there's no such thing as consciousness in the 3rd and 4th dimensions. Its bottom line is the 5th. That's where it starts. And mankind here had the Adamic root race on this planet 3.5 million years ago through a misadventure, fell into the third dimension and have been trapped there ever since. So there's been attempts to get them back to the fifth. The Garden of Eden was one. But it's reached the point now of no return. It can't continue this way anymore. So in this lifetime, in this cycle for the next 2,000 years, it's up or out. At the end of Aquarius, those whose consciousness have expanded enough that they're able to go back up into the fifth will be returned into the fifth dimension and continue. But those that didn't make it will be divested. There's 2,500 planets in all of creation, all local here in this local small group of 1,000 galaxies called the local universe. These are the only place in all of creation where there's a third dimension. There's only 2,500. And Earth is at the bottom 10%, but at the top of the bottom 10%. So it could be a lot worse, and it could be a whole lot better as far as, everybody thinks how bad things are here. It could be an awful lot worse. It could be an awful lot better. The point is that those that didn't make it at the end of Aquarius will be divested off into one of the other 2,500 and continue their incarnations in the lower dimensions until they finally wake up and clear their consciousness enough to do it. So that's part of the program that's underway right now, part of why these ships are here.
Is
They're
it
not
possible?
here to take, pardon me?
Is it possible we could be demoted even further to like two-dimensional? It's like a comic book?
No, it's already, the bottom line has been reached actually a while back.
This is where we are, the bottom of the barrel?
No,
okay.
We're coming out of it.
Okay.
No, but it's funny that you said that. Earth, there's 2,500 planets that have Luciferian conditions, and I'll get into that later on, what that's all about, that are a lesser frequency. Creation is a really pure, there's no such thing as good or evil in the fifth dimension above. Those words have no place because everything is harmonious. There's no such thing as disharmony. It's only down through the Luciferian actions down here. And the Earth, as I said, right now we are in the cleanup, in the aftermath of the Luciferian self-will rebellion of the cosmic overplus. If you can swallow that, I'll explain that later. The actual Luciferian rebellion that started 5 billion years ago is called the Luciferian self-will rebellion of the cosmic overplus. Cosmic overplus because this local universe of 1,000 galaxies is unique in all of creation. It has an extra high positive intelligence factor for things to come that none of the others have. And Lucifer used those frequencies to promote this idea of living in the third dimension, pushing life down to the third. The idea of the self-will rebelling is because what Lucifer did, and I'll explain why, he did it instead of you are created and brought into creation to be of love and service to the creation for the creators. That's your purpose here on life. Christ consciousness, which is, it's like Earth has 3,500 different races and species, and everybody's different, but there's only one consciousness. Your consciousness, my consciousness, exactly the same. Doesn't matter where you are, who you are. Even the guy herding goats in the desert, it's the same consciousness. There's only one consciousness. That's universal. There's only one consciousness throughout all of creation. It's called Christ consciousness. It's the consciousness of the only begotten son, daughter. That's the whole show right there. There's only one consciousness. Now, Lucifer took it the other way. He said, well, forget about all of that stuff up there and the responsibility. I'm going to make myself responsible only to myself. I can do what I want. This was the self-will rebellion. He rebelled against higher cause, and then they tried to set up their own universe. Had a start, but it didn't go very far, of a universe in which everybody was only responsible to themselves. So you had these guys setting themselves up as demigods. That's what the word demigod came from. Thor and Zeus, all those guys, they're all demigods. I'm God, but for a very small group of people, actually, in hindsight, all things considered. Point being that there are 2,500 planets that are being now starting to be cleared in the aftermath, which we're in, called Armageddon. Armageddon is affecting 1,000 galaxies. It's not on a hillside up in Israel. Armageddon is the cleanup of all of those lesser frequencies through 1,000 galaxies. Earth is the beta test. It's the first to get started, and it's a beta test, best way to put it. Things are tried. If they work, they'll go upstairs to the other ones. If they don't work, then we'll try something else. There's been 2 or 3 things that have already worked well here that have already been moved upstairs. So Earth is the beta test. That's why there seems to be so much going on here, because it's like, how do I put it? If you walked into the middle of a prison in the middle of Colorado, you couldn't believe how bad you're out in the inmate's yard, where all that crap's going on. But that's not the way society is. That's just that tiny little piece of the worst of the worst. Well, Earth is like that to the rest of creation. But we're all of us here that are watching the show in this type of consciousness. We're here as volunteers to help clean up the mess. We're not. You're either part of the problem or part of the cleanup.
Solution, yeah.
Part of the solution. We're all here part of the solution. The common term now is light workers, which is a good for. But we're the Christ voluntary, feet on the ground people. The heavenly host upstairs are the heavenly host in the air, so to speak. And there's a harmonization between us. They're guiding us in every step.
What are a couple of those examples of the things that got moved up? Like the successful things that got moved up.
Well, here's a very, very good one. I mentioned the intelligent design and creation that had come through in the original Revelatorium. It turns out that there were 4 different people on the planet who were given the principles of the intelligent design to bring forward into an outer expression of some kind. I was given a model of geometry to express it through. The intelligent design is modeled through simple geometric, the sacred geometry type stuff. That's not the intelligent design. That strictly models the rules and principles that the design is. But it models it extremely well, almost perfectly. There was 4, and I still to this day haven't found out where the other 3 are. But there was 4 that were given the principles of the intelligent design, 4 different ways of expressing it. Then in 1999, almost literally like a Academy Award, this was one night in a vision state, there was a ceremony. There was 4 of us standing in front of a lady who was receiving an envelope from behind. She was going to open the envelope, and whichever name popped out was the one whose work was going to be accepted. And that work was going to be, the feeling was that it was going to go out to the stars. That was the one that would go out to the stars. Well, the Revelatorium was the one that got picked. The Revelatorium intelligent design has gone out to the other planets. That's one. There was a Christ teaching given in 71, which I attended. It's where I got my start. It wasn't like the Revelatorium intelligent design. It was kickstarted by that teaching. There's the chapter on the qubits. I think it's chapter whatever it is in the intelligent design. The chapter on qubits is pretty close to everything that was taught, or everything in that chapter was taught then. But the rest of it is all fairly new since '99. But that Christ teaching, you see, when the evolutionary are taught Christ principle, I have to go back a step here. I'm going to be jumping around a wee bit like this. The bottom line of creation is the 5th dimension. There are 2 categories of beings in creation. There's called a descending order of beings. They're fully Christ triune. They are brought down dimension to their dimension of office, 5th dimension being the lowest. And they're the administrative or bureaucracy of creation. They're the people that run everything, all right? The other side is called an ascending order or evolutionary order of being. They start off in the 5th dimension with very, very little Christ consciousness. They're fine in intelligence, they're fine in substance attributes, so on, but they are literally no Christ consciousness at their start. They go through many, many, many incarnations through the 5th dimension on different planets under different circumstances, so learning what Christ consciousness is all about. They're taught it step by step what Christ consciousness is. At the end of that whole progress, however millions of years, even billions of years in some cases, they are collectively, whatever planet on, they receive it's called a bestowal, a triune, paradisical triune being incarnates into their midst for 1,000 years and teaches and exemplifies before them how Christ consciousness does its thing, so to speak. That's a simple way of putting it. What Christ consciousness is and how it works. They see it. That sets them ready to be able to be ascended. This is where the term ascending come from. People say, I'm going to send myself to the 4th dimension now. Well, no, you're not. Ascendancy, they are ascended up collectively into the 7th dimension, this particular race group, and there they will begin the same process of incarnation of learning how to put it into practice, learning how to do Christ consciousness. When that's done, then they're back up into the inner creation, eventually at the feet of creators. They become trinitized at the feet of the creator as full triune Christed beings like the descendancy started out. they go back out and help the descendancy now as part of for the next wave of evolutionary. And that's how the whole of creation is expanding outwards and upwards all the time, because when the evolutionary move in consciousness upward all the time, they're bringing a sort of a glimmering of Christ consciousness that expands all the way until they become trinitized, where it becomes a maximized Christ consciousness. So the Christ consciousness factor is growing step by step by every evolutionary that reaches the feet of the Creator. So the whole purpose of creation is to build that body of Christ consciousness as a collective amount, because originally there was only intelligent breath, which is of the Father, and personified now as Alpha. This is why Alpha and Omega are the Father and the Mother. And Omega was tiny particles of substance collectively known as Omega, and collectively substance, but there's no energy up there at all. And those two frequencies were slowly fading, falling in frequency down, 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 down. This is right out of the intelligent design of creation, so I jumped a bit of a way, but this is to back story a bit for the radionic shifts. It's falling, 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 falling. And there's a conundrum here, because if you have a frequency that's going up in frequency, there's no limit to how high it can go. It can be 100 trillion today. It can double that, triple that. It can keep going. And there's no limit to how far back it can go. But if the frequency's coming down, there's a logical limit, because when it reaches the point of no more vibrations, it's done. That's it. It's done. They saw their frequencies coming up this is the 18th dimension, Evan pool of darkness, where these intelligent breath and tiny particles are. They could see the vibrations coming down. So without going into 16 hours of how the intelligent, only begotten son daughter was brought into consciousness and being as part of their third aspect of their Trinity, energy was brought into being as their attribution, so on. So that with the energy, intelligence, and action part of energy now, I didn't get that right, the intelligence, substance, and energy things together, they could now create outer forms of themselves in manifested form that didn't degrade. That's what creation is. It's an outer manifestation growing step by step of themselves that isn't degrading, and eventually all of the Evan pool of darkness, which is, what's the word, endless reaches of the deep, it's just can be, converted into eternal intelligent energy substance in one shot. But it has to have energy to do it, because there wasn't energy up there. So this whole evolutionary cycle of the ascending evolutionary beings is building up that energy quotient until eventually, when I say we're only at the start of the whole show, eventually there will be enough energy altogether to boom, do it in one shot. So that's what we're involved with.
Huh. That's
How's that?
In a nutshell.
Yeah. It feels weird for me, because we've done this before. I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions that I've already asked you, so it is going to feel a bit weird. And I just wanted to mention too that Brian will want to get you to mention some of your experiences as well before the end. And I met Brian at we were on the same email thread for quite a while, and then we met at one of our CSETI groups, and it was awesome just having a bunch of really cool conversations. And, I meet these people in my normal life, and when we talk about the podcast and what kind of guests we have on and what kind of topics we talk about, it's funny, like people either fall into a camp where they know quite a few of them, or they just have no idea, right? They just don't know. And me and Brian kept talking about, so have you ever looked into this stuff or that stuff? I'm like, yeah, we had them on the show. There's about 10 or 15 topics that we were talking about similar. So it's good to have you here as well, Brian. So I guess I think probably listeners would want to hear a little bit about the process, about how you get this information, because we've had Grant Cameron on a few times on the show, and he's a Canadian UFO researcher, and he went from the kind of like the governmental work, the nuts and bolts and the research and the paperwork and the memos, and to the consciousness aspect of it, and he started meeting people that have been having these downloads. And we've had guests on that have had near-death experiences and had certain things happen in their life, which after that have given them access to higher information, or what you call downloads or whatever. So, and then there's the channeling aspect. So I guess I would question, or I have a question of, like, explain people, like, is it channeling? Is it a download? No, like, how does that work? Like,
all right. Well, this is now going to finish off what I just discussed. This whole entire mammoth cosmic plan that's going on to bring the falling frequencies into eternal status. I don't channel. I don't, the fingers don't work automatically and so on. I get the thought that it, but there's the odd time when something will come through. This would be, I'm trying to get the time frame. This is probably 2002, typing away one day. And now keep in mind this whole big cosmic plan that I just talked about, the energy being built so that the whole thing could be converted. That's what's going on. And I looked on the screen and there was the sentence that said, by their order, which means like plan and rules and so on, not a group thing. By their order, they worked the darkness into light. And I went backwards off my chair. That one sentence just said the entirety of what I spent the last 10 minutes talking about. And the whole of the Intelligent Design book is about. By their order, they worked the darkness into light. It's perfect, And the other one, I only had two. The other one I was typing away and I looked up and it said, the making of eternity is daily work. Now, I really like that one. The making of eternity is daily work. The rest of the time, it's basically I get the thought, I work it out. I get help because sometimes I'm typing away and it's almost like somebody else agrees, no, that's not right. I can feel really uncomfortable. I go back and try it again, and then it feels right. That's it. Everything's being done by, feeling and
intuition and...
Yeah. I'm going to finish off this. I want to go back to how did this start, like you're talking about Grant Cameron and so on. With the Radionic ships book, there's 650 photos in there and some mammoth amounts of enhancements had to go in it because some of them turned out, it started off just dirty brown with nothing showing. And now you've got a really nice, almost like a full color photograph. But I've seen the cursor, you work with a slider in an photo enhancement program. I've seen the cursor slide all by itself over to the right. Perfect setting. It's happened to me many times. Somebody's watching what I'm doing and helping me along. I'm not getting it. That's the cursor. I'm not even touching anything. The cursor goes over, So this started off, the long and the short of it is, as quick as I mean, because a lot of people relate to this type of thing. In the mid '60s, this is not a boast. This is to make a point and set things up. I was quite an accomplished chess player, bridge player, Go player, Japanese Go. Pretty good at poker cards and so on. I was a national rugby player. Could have played professional football. I didn't go to the spring camp that I was offered to, but I was that good an athlete. The point is that in '65, I stopped them all just like that, and I've never played a chess game since. I've never done anything. So I was as 3D as you could get, but that cleared the debris out of the way so that the higher stuff that was waiting to start coming through could start coming down without interference. So all of a sudden, now I went through the hippies. The hippies were all consciousness expanding people, so on. I went through all of that expansion, so on. So at the end of 2000. Wrong. At the end of 1970, I was fairly well along in consciousness. I knew a bit about the Luciferian stuff, but not much. I saw a poster, this would be in December, a lecture was being given in Vancouver. It simply said, who you are, what you are, where you're going. That's all it said. See, I was living up in Harrison Hot Springs at the time, which is 90 miles due north up the Fraser River.
Bigfoot country.
Well,
Sasquatch.
Yeah, and you're going to like the very next, 2 minutes from now, you're going to like what you just said. I knew I had to get to that lecture. I hitchhiked in, on the highway to get to this stupid lecture. Well, I walked in, and of course I'd been, trying to find out what I could about the Luciferian stuff and so on. And the guy walked up to this is a Friday night, walked up the blackboard and wrote, "We are in the aftermath, cleaned up in the aftermath of the Luciferian self-rebellion, the cosmic overlords." I said, right. So that's how it started. So now he's giving a lecture in the middle of January, just the next month, at his home, which was on the second floor of an apartment building in Vancouver. Off the kitchen was a small balcony, porch. So this was a weekend seminar. So he called a coffee break. Three of us went out on the back porch. The cloud was very, very low, overcast. So the city, the glow of the city lights, you could see, reflecting off the clouds and so on. On the porch with me was an 18-year-old girl from Brazil who was saying at the time, said, whenever I've seen a UFO, I felt, and she got that far into the sentence with her hand over her head, there was a 6'9" Sasquatch with me, Senator. Now, they're the shyest and gentlest people on the planet. They're absolutely beautiful souls. They're the shyest and gentlest people on the planet, which is why nobody ever sees them. They are beautiful people. And some of them have incarnated to be part of the Christ Army. There's two of them. These were two. They were brothers. One was 6'9", the other was 6'10". Parents were normal size. Anyway, so the three of us are on the back porch, and I pick up a saber jet going by, just under the cloud cover, a silver swept-back saber jet. Well, in those days, because the jets were going slow, you could hear the jet sound about 20 feet behind the plane. Jumbo jets were not jumbo jets, but passenger planes were the same. You could hear the jet trail behind the plane. So no sound. I went back over there, back to the no sound. I did that twice. There's no sound. The door opened. The guy stuck his head out with a big grin, said, "Did you see it? Did you see the flying saucer?" And went back in. So there's a guy with a direct hookup. See, I don't have a direct, I'll get to this in a minute. I don't have a direct hookup, but I'm sort of in a secondary hookup. But there was a guy at the time that was directly hooked up, feet up and straight up and down. Christ was directly hooked up 2,000 years ago, same idea. So now we're all the way around to the late summer of 73. He's now giving some seminars down in Denver, Colorado. Some of us came down from Vancouver to assist, pass around the cookies and the coffee and stuff. That's a joke. But anyway, it helped, keep the thing, set it up and everything. So we're done. We're going to go back to Vancouver. So he had a barbecue for everybody. There's about 30 of us all together in his backyard, he and his wife. Right overhead, about 1,000 feet, clear blue sky in all directions. There's a big, long, sausage-shaped cloud with fuzzy edges. We all knew what it was. Nobody said anything, but So now we're done. Time to go. We hop in our cars. We're going north up the I-40 or whatever it is, due north. They follow us in the station wagon to give us a send-off. They come out about 40 miles. The cloud is right over top of their car. They toot, honk, wave, cross the meridian, back into Denver. The cloud goes back with them. They're directly hooked up. All right. Now, so I was well aware of the UFO factor. I was told about the Radionic fleet, which is millions and millions of volunteers outside the orbit of Pluto. The four horsemen of the apocalypse from Revelations are, in fact, the four great motherships of the fleet. And those ships teleport into Earth thousands upon thousands at a time all over the world. They teleport into the fifth dimensional ships. They teleport into the fourth dimension. And you see them by their cloud, not the water vapor, not by the ships themselves. So I knew that much about it without knowing basically anything more. Going now, as far as the cloud aspect was concerned, I was shown that again in 71 without clicking on it, without connecting up. In the summer of 71, we went down to Second Beach in Vancouver, which is just along downtown core, and he said we would, if we're sharp, we'll see a UFO. See, well, we didn't see a UFO, but the Georgia Strait, from as far as you could see that direction to as far as you could see in that direction, was all broken glass. Lines going in all directions, crisscrossing everything. So the whole sky looked like broken glass. Well, that was what was actually happening is the sky was full of these radionic ships putting out their magnetic fields. We were looking for the ships like everybody else does, but nobody picked up on it, and he never said anything because, it's sometimes you have to learn by doing it or being there instead of being told. So now I saw these things. I lived in Vancouver. Then I was in Calgary, Edmonton for a long time. And I see these things overhead. I moved to Ottawa in 81. For the entire time of 81 till about 93 or 4, these crisscrossing clouds were going on all the time, basically without notice. I observed them. Let's put it this way: like you used to with the clouds when you're out in the train without, photographing or without acting on it, but you noticed them. Well, that's same with me. And then all of a sudden, the thought was through, that's a radionic cloud. It's the magnetic reflection of the ship in the fourth dimension. So I took a couple of photos. They're up in the website, as a matter of fact. There was 2 or 3 that were taken at that time. And then I stopped again. It was not yet time. I didn't do anything with that. I'm now in Brantford, Ontario, since the beginning of 2013. This is about 40, 50 miles west of Hamilton, which is 100 miles west of Toronto. For those of you that aren't from this area. We're just north of, on Lake Erie. I'm about 35 miles north of the Lake Erie.
Also, the home of Wayne Gretzky, and that's where the telephone was invented.
Yeah, well, there's the Graham homestead is still there as an archive museum, and Gretzky's father's house is still up there on Colburn Street with the rink in the backyard, and Wayne Gretzky Boulevard is one of the short freeways through town.
I've only been there one time.
Yeah,
a couple of years ago.
Yeah,
I won't say.
Well,
why.
It's a nice little town. It's funny. It's a 92,000. But it's cosmopolitan. It's got all the big box stores. You don't have to go anywhere. It's got all of. It's even got a big cinema. With 6 theaters. What else do you need?
Isn't it? It's right. It's like you're attached to like Cambridge too, pretty much, aren't you?
Well, no, we're 35. We're 35 kilometers from Cambridge. Cambridge, then Kitchener, then.
Yeah. I lived in Guelph for a couple of years.
Yeah. Cambridge is really it's. Toronto has burst its boundaries, and Cambridge is one of the main places taking the overflow coming out of Toronto now. So it's really bustling. But anyway, long and the short, I moved here in February of 2013. There's nothing in the skies at all. No crisscrossing lines, nothing. And I thought, boo-hoo-hoo, I left it all behind. I'm now out of the loop. Boo-hoo-hoo. This went on until May of 2014. Then I got an email from my friend in Uganda at Kampala that I'd mentioned, had picked up on the website stuff a while back. In 2012, this is not a boast, this is just to set up this next expression. I had a face-to-face with Christ Michael of Nebadon, who was known as Jesus 2,000 years ago, but he was queuing up some stuff that's going to be taking place. BRICS, he was queuing up that they're setting up a BRICS order. This is when BRICS had three countries in it. It now has 188. So I was showing the whole blueprint in advance of the new economic system that's eventually going to be coming out through BRICS. This was in 2012. Anyway, my friend says, I was talking to he calls them, what does he call them? Nocturnals. He said in a nocturnal last night, I was talking with this being and he described Christ Michael perfectly. I knew who he was talking about. He absolutely to a T described him. He said when he was finished, he was also being queued up some stuff because this is going on too. I'm not the only, and he's not the only. This is going on all the time. Anyway, he said when he was finished, he said, "Oh my goodness, I'm going to have to tell Delanova about this." Well, he said the being said, "Say hi to Delanova for me," while he waves with his right hand. Now that's a really weird email to get from somebody. See, well. I hadn't seen anything in the skies this whole time I've been in Brantford now, which is 14 months, I guess. 11 days later, I went out the back door for something, and there was a wall-to-wall sitting right up there. Just, wow, my goodness, I wasn't smart enough yet to put two and two together. I came out again the next morning. It was still up there. The light bulb went off. I waved with my right hand. So I'm not directly connected, but I'm basically, quote, in the loop. So that's how I know this stuff. Now, you can take that as a pile of crock if you want, but by the time the thing about the book that's up there on for sale and the website is by the time you finish, you can't dismiss it because there's too much evidence for it. And what I'm going to do in the next few minutes now is give you a bit of an example of the kind of things that are evidence for it. But anyway, there it was.
Okay.
Well, he waves with his right hand, so...
I got a couple questions then. So since you've been looking at clouds and looking at the sky for decades, have you seen a big difference in the weather modification, the chemtrails, the planes spraying, chemicals in the air, and now they're crisscrossing clouds all over the place, and they're man-made. So
chemtrails are a pain in the ass. Everybody knows that.
So how does that affect?
Well, that has nothing to do with the radionic ships. They're on a much higher frequency. There's no involvement between the radionic ships and the chemtrails.
Yeah, but there's chemicals in the sky, though. I mean, if they're spraying silver iodide and all this crap in the sky.
Well, let's be honest. The rumor is, and I'm one of the kind of sort of semi-believers, that there's more than just chemical iodide in that spray. Morgellons and a lot of these other funny things that come out of there.
Yeah.
Anyway, long and the short of it, chapter 10 of the of the website Radionics is about sylphs. Sylphs are fourth dimensional, semi-conscious man-animal, and they're working real hard at dissolving the chemtrails. Now, there's not enough of them to get a chemtrail when it is, but they're up there pulling, dissolving those things all the time. It would be a way, way worse now than it could be if they weren't involved. But they're working diligently to help keep the chemtrail problem under hand. I saw 35 chemtrails. That's why I know the difference. Again, I saw they were coming in waves of 2-3 planes each. You could see 3 coming on the horizon. I'm standing on just sort of at a bridge. 3 coming, 3 overhead, 2-3 in the distance already done. With the trails coming out behind them, and I counted 35 of these planes going over, all in this salvo. It took about 45 minutes. And it was weather modification all the way, because this was, I'm trying to think of the date. It had to have been 2010, sometime around there. This was at the end of June. The forecast for the the Atlantic Northeast, which is the, Eastern Canada and the Eastern Seaboard, was for 32, 33 degree weather for the next 10, 12 days. That was going to scorch the crops. I mean, just literally scorch them. So this thing happened. 35 of these planes went over, leaving the chemtrails. 4 hours later, the sky was just gray, dirty gray from horizon to horizon. And that was it. It was clouded over from a clear blue sky. These things were in clear blue sky. 4 hours later, it did its job. But the temperature never went above 28. So that was definitely a positive chemical weather modification spray. That's not to say they all are. I'm just saying there was an example. Yeah, but you cannot mistake chemtrails for the radionic radios. Once you get the picture between, there's no way to mistake them. You can't, And that the book makes it quite clear. This is that. This is these. We should now. I had another thought. We can get back to it if I remember it. We can now jump into what are we talking about? These radionic clouds, radionic ships, these kind of things. Well, let me bring this up in advance. All right.
I put the first picture up.
Right. There's a huge enterprise going on up there with these radionic ships. The radionic ships are from the higher fifth dimension. These are the good guys. The ships that the government is now starting to disclose, these are all from the Luciferian factions, like the 2,500 planets and the other 27,000 that never had a third dimension, but they still had Luciferian, interferences going on. They're all from the lower fifth dimension. And they were modified radionic ships so they could actually project down and become physically present in the third dimension. The radionic ships never come into the third dimension. You could see them by condensations they create, so you can see them, but you see them in a virtual form, not in their real form. But the corrupted ships will actually come down into the third dimension. That's the difference. There's only 1,000 of those, and they're quarantined. When Christ ended the rebellion 2,000 years ago on the Mount, a quarantine was put around Earth, so they can't get out. There was 1,000 of them about, and nothing can come in except by sanction. And the Val Allen radiation belt won't let them make a teleportonic jump. That's because these things work by, teleportations. So they're here. They're quarantined.
Does that mean we never went to the moon?
No, we didn't, because they couldn't get through the Van Allen radiation belt.
I've heard that before. Yeah.
They did a pretty good show of it. What's his name? Kubeck probably got a pretty good dollar for, probably the best movie he ever made, but nobody ever saw it except on TV. So anyway, if you can bring up, I'm talking about the whole community society thing that's going on up there. The way these guys work is that the book calls them, or whatever else you want to call them. I was told to call them radionic anchor scout ships. Now, these are small little ships. They're like tugboats. They're very, very small, but they have absolutely enormous magnetic fields. And they'll come down as a positive pole ship and a negative pole ship. They'll always come down as pairs. They'll set up 180 degrees opposite each other. They could be 20 miles apart. They could be 150 miles apart. Some of these fields are really large. And the positive pole, the magnetic fields from one will go over and hook up with the other. So they're actually forming a bar magnet overhead, just like a big envelope, very, very large. And that's an environment. They have set up a magnetic environment that the smaller ships, the mother ships, the father ships, the little run around scout ships and so on, move around in by magnetic propulsion. The same way mag trains work off the tracks, magnetically against the tracks. These guys work off the magnetic fields and zip around wherever they want to go by thought, by the magnetics and using thought to propel. So the first step that happens is that you have these anchor ships setting up a magnetic field. These are the main clouds that if you get up in the morning and go out and look, the chances are very, very good you'll see the radionic cloud of an anchor ship. So if you can bring up image 1. Now, the other thing, too, is you don't see the other smaller
image
ships.
Image 1 is the one with the houses, right?
I don't know. I guess so. yeah. All I want is the cloud is vertical. It's a big white cloud that's vertical.
Can
right.
see
It's on the screen right now. Yep.
I don't see it.
Oh, you don't, eh? Okay.
No, you don't.
Oh, they don't see it. Did we forget about that part?
No,
forget about that part.
I think I can.
So we do have it up on the screen, anyways. It's full.
So it's up. So the public is looking at it.
Yeah.
All right, then I'll just swing it. It'd be better to see it so I can point out. But anyway, the anchor scout ship magnetic fields are always vertical because they're horizon to horizon. Short distance apart, long distance apart. They're horizon to horizon, and the apex is always about 10, 15 degrees off the horizon. That's where they differ from chemtrails. Chemtrails have to meet at the horizon by the very way they're laid down. They come from the horizon, but the radionic fields are a little bit off the horizon. The negative pole ship is distinctive in it's full of cloud material up the middle, and there's usually a puffball, not exactly always, but there's usually a puffball, a cloud at the bottom. The other side, which is the positive pole, mate, is the example. If you can bring up image 2.
Image 2, okay, coming right up. That'll be a fast way to do this. Keep talking. It's okay. Just keep talking. Just keep. Image number 2 coming up.
What I was going to say is when
okay, we got image 2 here right now. Yep, with the no frills.
All right, now you can see. Yeah, and you'll notice there. I can see if you move back out of the way, Darren. I can see the picture. Okay, good. Yeah, good. That gives me a reference point. If you'll notice, there's nothing up the middle. It's still a V. It still comes down. It's still vertical. It still meets at the bottom, but it's still off the horizon. There's nothing in the middle, not always nothing in the middle, but usually nothing in the middle, and there's usually no puff of cloud at the bottom. The exact opposite. They're mirror images of each other. That's how you tell. A negative pole has always got more stuff in it because it's attracting the moisture. The positive pole of anything is always a little bit thinner or less because the positive pole magnetic field is moving away. So that's your basic original lineup, okay? So you now have a magnetic. If you had a pair of those, I should say you don't ever, because I've got 10 examples on the website, but very seldom do you ever see both at the same time because the moisture, comes from the west, the wind blows it through to the east. So you got one set up over there, and now you got the moisture, boom, now you got the cloud. It's moving through, and now it's starting to fade out on this side and starting to build up on that side. So now you got the big one up there, but nothing over on this side. The odd time the water vapor field or clump is large enough that they'll both be up at the same time. Very seldom, I shouldn't say very seldom, but not very commonly that happens. But then if you see one of those, if anytime you ever see one of these things, look in the other direction, 180 degrees. If you're lucky, you'll see the other one, and it'll be the opposite field. One final second. If you follow the lines, if you start from one and you follow the lines out all the way around, it's like a bar magnet. You go down to the other, it'll go into the other one. It's a perfect bar magnet, sitting right overhead like a canopy. Brian, you were going to ask.
Yeah, I just saw what you just said about 2 weeks ago, and I sent the pictures into Darren and Graham here just now.
Send it to me as well, then, if you can. Yeah, please. Thanks. All right. So that's sort of the rule how it works. Now, once you've got the environment, now these environments can set sometimes for days. Like they'll stay put. They don't move around. They're there. The clouds come and go. You see them, you don't. You see them, you don't. I've seen some of these set up in Brantford here for sometimes over a month. It's there today, not tomorrow. There today, there in the afternoon, not the next morning. Just whatever the moisture is coming through. You have to have the right kind of water vapor, usually up in the cirrus cloud levels, where the water vapor can be ionized, and then the ionization, because it allows them to be collected into the magnetic lines. If you go into the website down at the bottom near the bottom of chapter 1, there's a short video clip that somebody showed me from YouTube. I've always thought what I'd like to do is have a stopgap camera, taking pictures every 10 seconds or something, sitting there for the whole day, because you'd see that it sits putting all the clouds keep going by. Well, somebody did that. There's the thing. There's a radionic field sitting in the background, and the cumulus clouds are going right by. The cars are shooting right by, but the radionic field just stays there, which is exactly what I was trying to put. So what happens now is that with the radionic field set up, you have motherships and fatherships coming in, and they'll produce a cloud effect that's distinctly different. They're horizontal. They're not always. I've got a couple in the website examples that are more or less vertical, but usually they're horizontal, and they're also very long, and they're not V-shaped. They're, they could be sausage shaped. They could be whatever. If you can bring up now image 3, then this will be a mother field ship.
Yep, it's up.
Now that one was taken in Paris about a year and a half ago, and like that white sort of bar across it. It's not perfectly formed saucer, they're cigars, but that's the mothership. The long white cloud is the mothership, and you can see the finger-like tendrils coming off it. Now they're not like the rays that go out forever to the other side of the 180 degrees that the anchor ships do. But they do come off, and they extend sometimes fairly long, but they end. But you can see there the rays coming off it. I call them radials. The radials coming off are thick like fingers. That's the distinction of there's many different type of mothership clouds, but this type in particular, that's the distinctive format of it. The radials are thick. Okay. Now we go to the next image, which is a fathership.
Image 4, right? Am I afraid?
Yeah, image 4. Yep.
Perfect.
And I sent. I got Brian's.
I pressed the wrong button. Jesus, I'm the worst at this.
And I sent you Brian's pics too, Darren, which are pretty cool. We can.
Oh yeah, I have no problem just whipping.
Now, all right. I want to get those pictures, if you will, Brian, please. If they're good. I'm at the point now with the website and book, I'm swapping out. If I get a better picture than the ones in there, I've swapped out with a couple of yours.
There, that might help.
I got him an email here. I'll just forward it to you right now.
Yeah, there you go. Now, good. Yeah. Now we're talking. Now, as you can see, the radials on this is a fathership, are frilly. They're not like fingers. They're frilly. That's the distinction between the mothership, which is a denser, because it's a negative pole pulling in, and the fathership, which is a positive pole, which is pushing out. So it's a frilly kind of thing. And all of the different mothership, fathership variations, always that characteristic will sustain. The motherships are thick and clumpy, finger tendrils and so on, and the fatherships are frilly, like I don't know, whatever, like
an anemone.
Yeah. Now the fathership is that white bar again across the middle. Now the same way that anchor ships, you can't have a positive pole and a negative pole by itself in creation. There has to be parity. There has to be the mother and father don't ever show up by themselves. They're always together. Mother and father, positive, negative. So the poles of a magnet are always there. In the anchor ships, you can most of the time see them this way and in that way. The father and mother ships are always together in pairs too. They could be on opposite sides of the planet. One could be way up in the top of the atmosphere, another down near the surface of the Earth, but they're still always together and still always connected through the higher dimensions. The lines don't usually connect, although I've got 2 or 3 examples on the website where the lines of one go straight into the lines of the other, and they were meeting at right angles, which is pretty interesting. So anyway, there's the difference now. You've got the positive, negative pole anchor ship setting up the field, which is vertical, like a V. You've got the positive pole anchor ship, which is the opposite, which is like an empty V, vertical and empty at the bottom. You have a mothership radionic field, which is horizontal with finger-like tendrils. You have a fathership field, which is horizontal with frilly type tendrils. All right. Now, all of this I've said so far, it's kind of like a whoopie-doo. So you say, well, what's the proof? How do you know? Blah, blah. The next one is a little bit more fun. If you want to bring up the next one, this is where it gets real, folks. I guess is the best way to put it. I love this. This is real. Yeah, right. That was taken off the space station in September this year. It was published in the UK Mirror, I think it was the Mirror or Examiner, in the middle of September. What are those? They look like smoke rings. They could be UFOs. What do you think? Are they smudges in the camera? What's going on here? If you'll notice, the one on the left has a dark ball on top of a white oval. The one in the middle has a white. As a matter of fact, now go to the next image because I've blown it up so you can see them perfectly. If you go to the next image, it's the same as these three, but now we'll see them blown up. Blowing up this kind of stuff really works, because sometimes you don't see anything at all in the cloud. You blow it up, and there's some nice little character sitting right there.
Oh man, what's going on now?
See the UFOs in the space station there, James?
I have another one that was taken off the space station last year. It was only one.
I'm having some issues with
Skype?
my.
Yeah, are we offline or something?
I don't know. It says we're offline.
Why?
Keep
going. So,
well, all right. We need to see that. Well, anyway.
So that was that. What was that space station? What was that space station one again? Then.
Let's go back. If you can get back to that, then we'll just go because there's two more that come in sequence.
Oh, okay, good, yeah. And then Del, I sent you Brian's. I emailed you Brian's pics as well because they're really.
I'm all excited. Well, so. Let's cut this interview. I can't wait.
Okay, there we go.
Now you see on the left-hand side distinctively that's a dark globe sitting. That's the negative. These are called mobile scout ships. These are the little guys, 2 or 3 people in them, maybe 5. So they're not physical ships. These are fourth dimensional. I call them condensates. The word that was given to me is condensates. They have condensated water moisture into themselves, so they're like a virtual presence. You could throw a baseball and go right through, but you can't miss them. You can't say that's not, it's a really big drop of water. Anyway, there's the dark one with the light base. That's the negative pole scout ship. The one in the middle has if you can move is it possible to move the X's and the Y's there without losing the photo?
What is that?
That's just...
Oh, there you go.
No,
no one else can see that. Yeah, this is they're actually watching me use the broadcast software right now.
Oh, yes. They're not. Okay. Well, for the people watching, you can now see the obvious difference between the first two. The middle one is exactly the same, but it has a white ball in the middle on a white foot. I call them foot. So there's the negative pole with the dark image, and there's the positive pole with the light image, and then the one off to the side here is sort of not quite well formed, but it's another one of the dark ones, the negative poles. So this was taken in September 15th, around September 15th of this year off the space station. So what does this have to do with radionics? Bring up the next one, please.
Next one's 7, right?
Yeah.
It's doing that thing again.
Yeah, it's funny that
I'm always kind of borderline worried it's just gonna friggin' melt right down. So it's
melts in front of you. Yeah. Well, I'm always borderline worried I can hit the wrong key and everything goes south.
That should work.
No, one before. Oh no, this is what I want.
Okay.
This one was taken 2 years ago in the middle of September of my back door where I mentioned that I saw that big one. This is about a year or so later. But if you'll notice right, towards at the center going back towards the right-hand side, there's one of the negative pole ships sitting right there as plain as day. The same type of ship, the mobile scout ship that's sitting off the space station. And if you go up,
right corner there,
there's the white version. There it is. Perfect. I've got a news story here for basically the whole world between these two photographs. I can't do it yet. I'm going to get to that at the end of this. The input end is next. It's done, and the output is next. money has to come from somewhere to bulk print the book. Because right now the book costs $85 on Amazon and nobody's going to buy it, but I can bulk print it and get the price down to $29.95, which is a perfect price. So that's part of the name of the game here. But there you see it. That was taken 2 years ago. To me, that's proof of the pudding. It's the same thing that they caught off the space station, only I took that out the back door. This building here on your right-hand side is the back end of it's a big, house with a pile of apartments in it and so on. Anyway, what else? And you see it sitting in a radionic field. There's the radionic. There's a positive or negative pole radionic field. And remember I said the little ships floating around the side of the radio? Yeah. There's your perfect example. There's the radionic field. There's the ships inside it. That's the way it works. That's going on thousands of places all around the world all the time, every day. People are saying, boy, is that ever a funny looking cloud? Yeah, well, that's what this book is for. Teach you what those clouds are and why they're there and what's going on.
We got to get that book.
Yeah, we should.
It's worth $85. Yeah, is it hardcover?
Yeah, no, I wish it were. This is Amazon, because it's 420 pages in full color, printed on a laser printer. The print on demand means they print one at a time.
Yeah, that's right.
So it's like Staples. It's 15, 16 cents per one page in color versus 3 cents, 4 cents in black and white. It's the same thing with the book. The color book is, so Amazon would not let me even list it for under $85.
Wow.
Here's the irony. If it sells direct, I make the sale right straight through to Amazon through my link. I'll make about $16, $17 on that. If a bookstore buys it from Amazon and resells it, I make 66 cents out of that $85. But if I bulk print it, if it's bulk printed, then we make about $18 per book, and it'll sell a lot faster at $29. But if a bookstore buys it and resells it, I make $7 or $8. There's a huge headroom getting the Amazon connection out of the way, because it's not printed on laser. That's the Achilles heel here. Printing it on laser involves the laser printing cost. Color on laser printers is abhorrently expensive. It still is. It always has been.
Yeah.
Can't get around it. So, all right. So now go to the last and final. Now, don't forget. There's 650 photographs in this website. You have now seen what, 7?
This will be number 8.
This is the final one that I'm showing. This is just to give you a warm up. Now, see right over there on the left hand side. That's a condensated fathership. Instead of the cloud like we saw earlier, this is a smaller saucer shaped fathership. But you can see the absolute distinct outline. But you can see the radial lines coming off it. Anytime you see at the top, you see where those three, that sort of, the three things coming down. If you ever see those in any photograph or cloud array, there's a fathership involved because they produce that particular effect. That's a distinctive signature of a fathership. Now, I was toying with the idea.
It looks cloaked in this picture.
Well, that's not the thing. See, that's the thing. They don't cloak in. Now I've got examples in the website of where they have actually cloaked, but they don't go out there and cloak themselves to be there. They produce an image because of the water moisture it's moving through. It mirrors it themselves in the water vapor as they sit there. That's all that's done. It literally molecule for molecule. Where there's a molecule in the ship, there's now a water vapor in the fourth dimension where that molecule is. So now the whole ship is actually mirrored in the fourth dimension in the water vapor that's passed through.
So, Del, that's kind of like when we were in high school there, science class, with iron filings on a sheet of paper with a magnet underneath.
Yeah. It's exactly the same thing, only overhead, only in clouds. Instead of the of iron filings, it's exactly the same. Instead of iron filings, you got polarized cloud overhead, stripes of cloud. Now, again, that's the basic thumbnail of how things are working, and there's a really big whole thing going on behind that, because Earth itself right now is at a culmination point of about 17 or 18 very, very major cosmic events that are unparalleled. Earth right now no planet in the history of creation has ever been at the same point of energy confluence that Earth is right now, and never will be again. It's a very, very unique thing, because I had mentioned earlier that the outer creation, that was built on the frequencies of the sun. Did I mention that? I talked with somebody
not tonight. You haven't, and I don't think you did. I don't think you did last time.
Well, then it's time to do a little bit of a sidestep, just a quick bit. This is again out of the intelligent design stuff.
And I'm going to send you the clouds from my skydiving trip too. That you last time. Remember my skydiving was the my Skype thing.
That. Yeah. Here's the thing. We're doing an interview with Graham about radionic clouds, and his front piece photograph is him skydiving, and the backdrop is a full-fledged radionic cloud. That just blew me away. Absolutely blew me away.
And the guy I was skydiving with is here now. He just showed up.
Oh,
wow.
Well. Yeah. So,
hey, James.
So you're lucky to get. By the way, these guys are the good guys. They aren't the ones that abduct and do all that kind of crap. They're here to put those guys out of business. And I don't mean put out of business like there's a.
He's done some abduction.
Huh?
I said, who, Graham? He's done a little abducting in his day.
Yeah, well. I can make a point, by the way. Sometimes, people that were abducted, they wake up, they're on a gurney, and there's wires coming down, and there's buzzing noises in the background, and people are talking, white masks and all that. And so they have gone through what's called a experience, an abduction experience, but not always, because, and I can speak for firsthand on this, I went through that exact experience in October of 2012. I thought, oh no, I've been abducted. But without going into a long detail about anything of how it happened, I ended up in emergency care in Ottawa on Boxing Day of 2012. I came out of a coma at 7 o'clock, lying on a gurney with wires all over the place. The machinery making all the noise, and the staff standing around me, the white mask and so on, exactly what I had been shown in October. I was shown in advance that was going to happen. That's what I'm trying to get at. So sometimes these abduction experiences are actually prescient. You're going to be in a car accident. The lesson had been to give me that I failed to work with properly is that this is what's going to happen if you're not watching your P's and Q's. Well, I didn't watch my P's and Q's, and by accident I ended up in emergency. But if I had been saying, I'm being shown to be on the lookout, I would have avoided that particular situation, that it wouldn't happen. So all I'm saying is that without any doubt whatever, some of what people experience as abductions are actually, were pre-warnings that they could end up in an emergency care, because they're identical. A gurney, all the wires coming in, all of the noise going on in the background, the machinery and the people talking with the white masks and all that. The only thing that didn't happen was the saw didn't come down. The buzz saw didn't come down.
Thank God for that.
Yeah. So
Darren, I've sent you my skydiving pic too, if you want to pull that up. And
no problem. I'm having,
This is great. As I say, there's an expression out there.
There's Grandma. Cheeks are flapping. Look at his cheeks.
Now, I'm going to ask you, here's the question at the end of the chapter, okay? In grade 10, at the end of the math book. Is that a fathership or a mothership radionic field?
Mothership.
Fathership it is. It's really. Bingo.
Final answer.
To the right there? Is that what you're talking about, the cloud there?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Just before we change the picture, I would like everyone to just take a look at those sexy cheeks one more time.
That's a beefcake right there.
Savor the moment. Get back to enjoy the moment,
Here, as long as they're picking on Graham. You can come back when you want. They're picking on Graham, we'll throw one up at me here.
Yeah, I got Darren's here too, so.
But in the meantime, I'm going to throw one up at Brian's while I download that. Here's one here.
And actually, James probably took this picture of Darren coming up.
There's one. Who's it?
Oh, yeah, I've got that on the website. I've got that picture on the website.
That one there? That's one of Brian's,
That's one of the ones
right?
I remember, Brian, I said I'd swapped out that's one of the ones I swapped out. I had one exactly like that, nowhere near as good. So that went in, the other one went out. But you see it's light at the bottom? It's off, and this means it's fairly close. The higher up they are, the closer in they are. And there's quite a gap off the horizon there. But see, that's a perfect negative pole radionic anchor ship, because it's got cloud up the middle. There's a cotton, fuzzball at the apex point, and it's off the horizon. See, there's the beauty of this Alberta Plains thing. You can see what's on the horizon. Most of the time there's a building or a tree or, hills or something. You can't see what's underneath the cloud. But here, this was the example of, it's up there in space, not see, that can't be a chemtrail. It cannot be a chemtrail because a chemtrail would go to the horizon because it came from the horizon.
That's right. That's it, unless it crashed.
Yeah, unless it crashed, yeah.
Okay, here's that skydiving pic here. Could be a ship of some sorts in here, too. It was the same day at almost the exact same time.
It was only about a minute apart.
Oh, yeah, there's me. I'm just loving it.
You don't see anything there, sorry. I mean, you can see there's stuff around, but you don't see a cloud. Look at that. You're giving the deep state signal, the Illuminati sign.
Right. I'm actually a card-carrying member.
You're a card-carrying member? Yeah, you're right. I hope
they asked me. I denied.
Well, I had actually, believe it or not, one night it was interdimensional again. There was an acting troupe traveling around the country. I can't remember, political of some kind, and they showed up in Ottawa. A friend of mine went. She was all gaga about it. But that night, through her, the linkage was through her. This voice came in and said, hoarse. It's almost like one of these demon voices in the movies, hoarse, heavy voice. He's referring to the real journey. Why don't you forget about all that kind of stuff and come on over here? We're having a lot more fun. We can do a lot more for you than those guys. Oh, now that's good. And I've got that on the website too. That one's already up.
So you can see it that clear from that camera. That camera might be too good in the studio there.
I'm sharing the screen.
Okay, good.
No, I can see that fine. Yeah. I've got one of those was taken by my friend in Vancouver about 2 years ago. It's exactly the same as that. Taken in Vancouver. That's why I jumped out of my chair when I saw that, because now I got it. See, one of a thing is a thing. Two of a thing proves the thing. If I can get two of the same type, it confirms each other. Well, that confirmed the original, which was sort of standing alone at the time. But
somebody told me to go out and take that picture.
Yep. Well, there it is.
I think I'm more here.
And before I lose my thread of thought, we're going to go into the structure of the outer creation.
Okay. Oh, there's, hang on, it's just coming up here.
That one's a little harder to see. It's a little smaller.
Oh, no, that one I just got from the chats today.
Oh.
When I mentioned we were talking about clouds, people started throwing their cloud pics in the chats.
Oh, that's right. I think that one was from Michael, actually.
Maybe.
What kind of cloud is that, Del?
Cumulus.
That's it.
Now you're talking about looks like a wingnut up there in the middle.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'd have to blow it up to have a look at it. I can't tell offhand. See, there's often little fragments of ionized stuff all over the place because there's only a bit of the ionizable water vapor removed. So you get little bits and pieces all the time, Now, there's another one.
That's one of the ones I got just the other day.
I want to get that. I don't have that. That's a
I just sent it to you.
Now, here we go. Now we're going to the second question at the end of the chapter. What kind of an anchor ship is that?
Mothership.
Male.
No, it's not a mothership. It's vertical.
That's an anchor ship. It's like an anchor baby by a cloud.
No, it can't be a mothership or a fathership because they're horizontal, or most of the time, or saucer shaped and so on. This is an anchor ship because it's vertical.
Yes.
But the negative pole ones usually have something up the middle, and they usually have a clump of cloud at the bottom. The positive pole ones usually don't have anything up the middle and usually don't have a clump of cloud at the bottom. So what kind of an anchor ship is that?
I don't know.
Negative, because it's up the middle and it's got a clump at the bottom. Those are your rules.
If I would have known it was positive or negative, I would have guessed at least.
Well, yeah. Well, it's got to be positive or negative. There's no such thing as or.
What about neutral?
There's only positive or negative. That's the two polarities. All of creation. Father is positive. Mother is negative. That's it. That's the only two polarities in all of creation. All of magnetics. The only begotten son daughter. The energy of the only magnetics was set up as an electromagnetic field. The magnetics that we see down here in the third dimension is the lowest of the lowest of the lowest of the lowest frequencies of the only begotten son daughter, but it's magnetic, electromagnetic. It's positive and negative polarity setting up a magnetic field.
Especially at Walmart.
And this is doing that. The Walmart?
The Walmart is, I think that's like That's where when you start telling about our dimensional scale on Earth, it makes me think you're going to Walmart.
No, it used to be called Radio Shack. Radio Shack used to be the lowest common denominator for buying anything. In fact, I used to use the expression, when Mr. and Mrs. Radio Shack start to believe it, then you really got it going. Now it's Mr. and Mrs. Walmart believe it. That's why I want to get the book out onto the at a bulk printed rate, because I want Mr. and Mrs. Walmart to start.
Am I supposed to have more pictures?
You might have one more from me.
One more, maybe. I don't know which one to pick. Let's try this one.
We can delete some of these pictures if the wrong picture shows up, right? Edit this.
I'll just pull the plug real quick. You just scream, and I'll pull the plug. It says it's a GIF, which has me a little worried. You didn't pull a GIF out of the chats, did you, Grab? Jesus.
No, that's one we've already seen.
We looked at that one. I have a couple emails here. Maybe I was supposed to keep downloading stuff.
I do want to get into eventually as well, just for the more skeptical people here that, you guys have had sightings of physical craft as well, I believe, and stuff that's a little bit easier and more tangible for people. I mean, this is the type of thing that might take people years to wake up to, like once they figure out that there is, these higher dimensions and sort of a cosmic hierarchy.
The chapters 16 and 17 are filled with all kinds of examples of those little condensated type ships, like we saw off the space station, and we saw the condensated father ship that was sitting over the houses in Paris. Chapter 16 and 17 are about all of those kind, so there's quite a few in there. I mean, it's all part and parcel. There's also a third type of ship in there that I still quite haven't figured out yet, because they show up all over the place. They literally look like a finger or a sausage coming out of a little white, like one of those white feet, oval shape and so on. But I've got one where you can see the white feet from the side, and it's as thin as a plane of glass. So that means it's a portal of some kind. It's an interface between the fourth and the fifth dimension, but I haven't figured out what the ship is yet. Anyway, while you're doing that, or aside from doing that, I'll go into. I was going to talk now a wee bit out of the intelligence. By the way, while I'm at it, the 3-book series are called The Revelatorium of Alpha and Omega, The Intelligent Design and Creation, which is actually Volume 1, and The Radionic Ships of the Heavenly Host. This is what the Intelligent Design and Creation book looks like. That's Volume 1. The Revelatorium of Alpha and Omega is the second book in the series. See, I want to see all 3 books on a bookshelf, because if you're colorful enough, they'll attract somebody's eye. And this design was done by an outfit in India. I wrote the tune and they played the piano, and I think they did a pretty darn good job. Nice. And this is the new one called the Radionic Ships, the Heavenly Host. So the 3 of them are a matched set. So at least I got that. I forgot to do that at the beginning. We were going to talk about the.
Here, one sec. Let me put your screen a little bigger there while you hold up the book.
Oh yeah, start again. All right. I guess while you're trying to just sort of get things, what I'm endeavoring to do now, I have to raise about $15,000 cash. I'm doing everything on old age pension money by not going to bars and not going on holidays, just flipping the dimes, spending it where it needs to be. But I can't, I would save for 15 years to be able to do about publishing. So I need to have financial support come in through a patron. I have a GoFundMe campaign at GoFundMe.com. You would look for the Radionic Ships of Light. And you would bring up a GoFundMe campaign. You could throw in $50 or $100. Somebody's put it. I have $800 raised out of that so far, but that's been about 8 or 9 months. So that's not going to finance the books. I like the idea of, I call it using other people's money, i.e. bank, and buying time. If it can be done instead of somebody forking out the cash, which is, how many people have that kind of money to do that? But if they have enough credit to be able to get a credit card for, say, $15,000, The credit card buys the books, so that's using other people's money. The sale of the books pays off the credit card and eventually will pay back 3 times back to the lender, so they make something out of it. There's enough headroom that I can do that and continue larger and larger and larger publications. And that's the idea of buying time. So you're buying time using other people's money. And if I would get another credit card from somebody for, like, say, $2,000, its only job is to pay the interest monthly payments on the big one, because I can handle the $10 or $20 a month out of the small one. So that, to me, is an ideal plan. So I'm hoping somebody will say, gee, that's really a good plan. Let's do it. Hasn't happened yet, but I'm hoping. It has to be somebody who either they just won a lotto, they got cash on hand, or they have sufficient credit that they can handle a credit card like that. I met with a fellow here, and he's from Hamilton, actually, and he said, I like your idea, 100% for it, but here's my problem. And he put 7 credit cards on the table. He said, that collectively is $60,000. He said, I have to pay these down before I could give you a card for $50,000. He says, I can't do that right now. So at least I know that the plan has viability. All I need to do is find somebody that can do it, Anyway, I just put that out there,
I've got some notes in here about tin pot ships. What was that all about?
Well, the tin pot ships. Let me do this quick thing about the outer creation, because the next step is, why are they here? And the tin pot ships are part of why they're here. Okay. The tin pot ships are part of the problem. They're here as this part of the solution. We're here as part of the solution. The outer creation is formed out of it's 900 trillion light years across. It's in 7 huge super universes. And they're all based, the 3 frequencies. We've talked about the intelligence, energy, and substance of the creators, the Holy Trinity, everything being converted into matter, substance, and that down here. The 3 attributes, and intelligence, energy, substance is all there is. If you want to take a look at and look at anything that exists in creation, in physics, plasma, and so on, it's one of those 3. Intelligence, energy, substance is all there is, right? If you permute those 7 different ways, you have intelligence, energy, substance, and you have substance energy, which is the 4th frequency. You have substance intelligence, which is the 5th. You have intelligence energy, which is the 6th. That's the creative frequency. Then you have intelligence, energy, and substance together equally, which is the triune, complete frequency. So the 7 super universes were built in turn, one after the other. The very first one ever put out there was the intelligence, meaning that intelligence was at normal frequency or volume, call it that, and intelligence and substance and energy were somewhat diminished. Then the second one bifurcated, I think the word's bifurcated, off the first, and it was of energy, so energy was the normal, and substance and intelligence were somewhat diminished, and so it went until we hit this final one. Now, they were all created on the frequencies of the only begotten Son. Intelligence, energy, and substance were the attribution, and Christ consciousness is the expressed result. This is I talked about the evolutionary progress going up. Well, they're expressing Christ consciousness as they go, manifesting it. So you have intelligence, energy, substance, attribution, and Christ consciousness is the expressed result. There is now, we're at the very beginning of a whole new 7 more super universes are starting up. This local universe of 1,000 galaxies it's again a bifurcation off this one. The frequencies of this local universe are sort of like the first atom that's going to, the cell splits off. The local solar sector of Orion is the launch pad where the frequencies are moved through. And Earth is the training sphere where the soul atoms for the new creation are being trained. Okay? So that's right there why Earth is an essential aspect of all of it. A whole new 7 great super universes are going to be created, and we're right at the threshold at the very beginning of it as the training sphere. Okay? The way that administrative-wise, the way a super universe is set up is in terms of what are called local universes of 1,000 galaxies. They're called paradisical sun daughters, have in their consciousness the capacity to create whole galaxies in their thought, through their thought. They blueprint a local universe design. It's approved, by Alpha and Omega for the purpose they intend for creation that will help. And once approved, then they bring it into being. Christ Michael of Nebadon is headquarters in this galaxy, is the creator sun daughter that's manifested the local universe that we're in. Okay? The local universes themselves are comprised of 1,000 galaxies, and galaxies are portioned out in terms of solar sectors. A solar sector has 1,000 solar systems. Now, there's 100 billion stars in this galaxy. So, that means like there's what, 1 million? I can't remember what the math is. Anyway, there's like millions of solar sectors in this galaxy alone. So there are a lot of them. The administrators of a solar sector are called Lanadonadic suns. And they have in their consciousness the capacity to create stars and planets. They create through their consciousness the stars and planets of their local solar sector. Lucifer, our good buddy, chum, friend on everybody's tongue, Lucifer was the Lanadonadic sun administrator of this local solar sector that the solar system belongs to, of Orion. And 5 billion years ago, I had mentioned earlier the bottom line of creation is the fifth dimension. He had seen a way to work with the unique frequencies of this local universe because it's part of the new creation. It's the jump point or the atom bifurcation seed for the new creation. It has it's called a cosmic overplus. It has a higher than normal intelligence factor in it. Lucifer had a higher than normal intelligence capability, high IQ for his Lanadonadic type because of these higher frequencies to work with. He saw a way of using the overplus frequencies to bring consciousness down into the third dimension, where it doesn't exist anywhere else in creation and never has before, because it started off, and this is going to sound kind of weird to say, he started off with the best of intentions. He didn't start off to create all the chaos that happened. He started off with the best of intentions. He saw a way of bringing consciousness into the third dimensions, where he saw that the more primordial, coarse energies of the third dimension would cause the consciousness to have to matriculate into Christ consciousness faster or get disrupted by the forces. So he saw waves. He thought it would speed up the evolutionary factor instead of the ponderous, slow, step after step after step of the regular incarnation. He'd speed it all up. Well, he pitched this before the Galactic Council, and they said, no, there are energies that are going to be coming in that will short circuit out against. So it's not advisable to proceed. Well, the fall of pride was that he said, well, this is too good an idea to let go. I think these guys are just trying to keep me in my place. So he disavowed the hierarchy above him. This was the rebellion aspect. And he set it up on the basis, using these energies down here, I can create a self-willed, sustained, permanent entity as my own God, so to speak. This is where demigods came from. I can create a self-standalone image, replication of myself that will have eternal life, but I'm not responsible to the creation anymore, because that's why I was brought into being, this responsibility of creation. So that was the fall of pride and the actual act of rebellion. Satan, that everybody fears and falls apart when they hear the name and so on, was actually a very, very young third-level Lanadonadic, was the female side of a third-level Lanadonic son, who third levels are the ambassadors. They take, they work the same way as ambassador from America in Cuba. The government says, we want you to tell the Cuban government to do that kind of thing. So they're the ambassadors, simple, normal stuff. So Satan embraced the Luciferian, formalization and took it to the planets. Satan is the one that took it to the planets. Satan is the evil one that taught the planets how to be evil. All Satan did was take the Luciferian stuff around in the self-will. And now once you've got a self-will mode instead of tied to the rules of creation, you can do anything you want. And all hell broke loose. It was a Pandora's box. They never foresaw that it would go this way. But it literally like a Pandora's box. Once it got started, it was like a snowball. And it proliferated almost overnight into this cacophony of negative static condition we have right now. Now, this is 5 billion years ago.
5 billion or million?
No,
billion with a
5
B.
billion, 5 billion years ago, yeah. And of the 100 billion in this galaxy alone, let alone 1,000 galaxies, only the 27,000 planets ever got Luciferian. and only 2,500 of those ever got the third dimension. They wanted to get life down into the third dimension because of the generation of what's called N+. When you rub cotton and wool together, you get static bits. But when consciousness is disharmonious inside itself, there's disharmonious movements of energy in the consciousness, it generates, and then it's called negative plus static, and it's a noric static. And it accumulates, and it was that static they were using to build a false outer body of themselves, by compressing it and making a material body out of the static. So they were using these planets to generate enough of that static that they could create. This is where all your demigods and stuff have come from. I don't even know where to step from now. So we're now reached the point of 2,000 years ago, Christ Michael on the Mount, who was incarnated as Jesus, he did the bestowal. I mentioned there's a bestowal, to represent the Christ before the people and so on. Well, Michael did that here. And he ended the rebellion, and we're now in the cleanup, which means Earth right now is two things. It's the beta test where these tests, ways of cleaning up the static are going on. But at the same time, Michael, in the Bible said, and it's fact, Michael and his angels won a war in the heavens, and the dragon was cast into the earth. The draconian solar sector, which is nearby Orion, was the first of the other solar sectors to pick up the Luciferian stuff, which is why there's so much draconians. Draconians aren't bad people. There's a small core of them that are real badasses. Like some of the worst people on Earth today right now are incarnated draconians. These guys went really upside down. Huh?
Can we try and
the
guess
lizard.
some?
They're talking about lizards and stuff
like
that.
the Queen? Is it Queen
lizard?
Obama.
Wait a minute. You're talking about they're shifting. You can see the slits in their eyes. Yeah. Well, yeah. Anyway, I'm not going to get into any of that because that's another 5 hours all by itself. Anyway, you're absolutely correct. That's true. That's the crap that's going on. The dragon that's cast into the earth is simply that all of the people with still having lesser Luciferian conditions in their consciousness were grouped together and incarnated into the earth, ergo the population boom. That's why it was a big boost and then it's over, because the dragon was cast into the earth, and it's called the dragon because most of them were draconians. The draconians were by far the greatest of the ones that embraced the Luciferian stuff, and then they came. Now you have terrorists, because some of the really bad ones are incarnated and on the loose. You have terrorism and all these different things going on now, and that's where they came from, out of this group. So Earth is also filled with that garbage, abomination, if you want to call it. But as you already know, we're at the end of the Pisces era. The transition into Aquarius started 2088, finished in 2014. We're now into Aquarius for the next 2,000 years. I mentioned that the dispensations went 25,000 years. Well, the last 25,000 years is finished. We've now started a new one. Everybody said 2012, December 23rd, was a bust because nothing happened. Well, it was a momentous occasion because, like New Year's Eve, Times Square on New Year's Eve, 1 second before 12, it's still the old, and then boom, you're suddenly the new, and everybody lets up a big cheer. Well, 10 p.m., 2 hours, I was in Ottawa, so this was 2 hours before midnight on December 20th, a huge interdimensional cheer went up because we had the same thing as New Times Square. The old 25,000-year cycle had ended just like that, and the new one had started. Unlike the dispensations, which go through a phase-in period, the 25,000-year cycles are just like our New Year's. That's over and the new one started. So that was what took place. We are now into a new 25,000-year cycle going on now as we speak. There's also a new 250,000-year cycle going on as we speak. The galaxy planet does a 250 million cycle around the galaxy. That's now completed. We're at the transition between that cycle and a new cycle. We're also, Earth, because of this new creation that's going on in Andromeda, Earth itself, planets become stars, just like kids become parents. Parent becomes child. So 250,000 years from now, Earth will be teleported by the people on its surface. They will be united in consciousness, and not all of them, but a group of them will teleport Earth to the womb of Orion, which is the Horsehead Nebula. There's a stellar nursery in there. It's called the womb of Orion. It'll be teleported into there, and Earth will become a protostar. That's, Earth and all its works will be burned up. That's why it's going to become a star, right? And that was delayed because 3.5 million years ago, the root race on the planet, which was in the fifth dimension, got talked by the Luciferians to go down into the third dimension. And they say, once you polarize to the planet and not to creation, you're trapped. You can't get back up.
But we are now.
The polarities are now.
Now in the age of Aquarius, we're getting out of there.
That's the whole thing. That show, folks, is over.
So you think that we're going to see in the next few years, we're going to realize how important 2012 was to us, probably? Like, everybody was expecting like this big shift, but you guys started noticing this.
I read something the other day by somebody on the internet. It was a really illumined article about that, but he started off by saying, this one won't be a bust like 2012 was. Well, I had to call him up and straighten him up. It'll slowly over time, people start, seeing a lot of these things. See, Satan too. This is a what the prodigal son is? The bad guy comes back and everybody celebrates, and the good guy is all ticked off because nobody celebrated when he came back and he was the good guy. Well, Satan, the woman, she incarnated this time around as a woman, and she passed in the early 90s. But Satan was a young Lanadonidic in training, so basically guiled. He wasn't a true rebeller. She just got guiled into this fancy footwork that was going on, and so in 1994 she brought a physical fact, and the action was taking place. She brought all her people back. She came back to the feet of Christ, is the expression. She returned to the feet of Christ, brought all her people with her. That was a prodigal son of huge song, and she was abolished of all shame and blame because of what had happened, because she was guiled. She was an innocent that was guiled. This is really quite a thing. People that think Satan is the worst evil that ever existed. People that pray to Satan are praying. You might as well put a voodoo doll up the window and pray to that. You'll get more good out of it.
So Del, speaking of that, I want to hear a little bit about Brian's experience, but for all the people that get sort of triggered over Christianity, and like there's a lot of dogma in the institution of Christian religion, and you're talking about Christ consciousness, and there is a like a non-dogmatic part. Like, can you explain like how that what you're talking about is different than the dogmatic religion that people think of when they hear that?
Well, here's I'll give a couple of quick examples. First of all, the Bible is as good as it is, and I'll qualify that in a minute, but it's dealing more with principles than it is with physical fact. Like the Ark of the Covenant, which the movies and everybody believes is a box with rays coming off it, stored in a dungeon secret, somewhere
in Ethiopia.
When you and I made an agreement to have this interview. There's an arc in consciousness between us that held that fact together and made it happen. There's an arc in consciousness between you whenever you make an agreement with anybody about anything. An arc in consciousness exists between you as long as that agreement sustains. Okay, the Ark of the Covenant was a covenant made between God and the Israelis that they would act as the crucible for the advent of Christ 2,000 years ago. The Israeli people at that time said, yes, we will be the crucible through which this Christ consciousness of the Piscean Christ through Christ Michael will take place. We agree to that. That was the covenant made. That was the Ark of the Covenant between God and the Israelis, that they would be the crucible for the advent of Christ. Now, society at the time was abominable. It's probably as bad as it's ever been since after Atlantean, so at that point, 3,500 years ago. So Moses was given the 10 Commandments to live by to clean up their act, which it did, because when Christ incarnated into Jerusalem 2,000 years ago, as bad as it was with the Romans and everything, as a spiritual society, it was far advanced from what it was, 3,500 years ago. So that's what the 10 Commandments were for. See, so there's principle rather than fact. Okay, the other one that makes pretty. In Revelations, a beast will rise out of the sea, having spots as the leopard, feet of the bear, mouth of the lion. Out of the sea, and so I've even seen, out of the sea will rise a terrible beast with seaweed hanging on its horns. This kind of stuff. Out of the sea of consciousness, all right, will arise a society structure which will be spotted as unto a leopard, i.e. Europe. You have 35 different countries in Europe. The cultures in each of those little pockets, like Italy, France, Germany, are totally different. France and Germany, 2 feet apart. A German on this side and a Frenchman on that side, totally different kind of people, totally different kind of culture. And they're so spotted as unto a leopard. That's what that out of the sea of consciousness will rise a beast, meaning bestial in consciousness, but spotted as unto a leopard. The feet of the bear walks a vast Russian landscape. Vast Russian landscape. Out of the mouth of the lion has come English language, which is a fifth dimensional language to raise people's consciousness into the higher fifth dimensional realities. Out of the mouth of the lion is English language that's been passed around to all of the countries of the world, so on and on. So there's again where the physical interpretation versus the real interpretation is quite a difference. And here's the thing: you're talking about the stunted. The religious people have a little bit of toe to hoe here, because a lot of them, you get down to the fundamentalists and the evangelists and things like that. If it's not in the Bible, it can't be the Word of God. And that stops you dead in your tracks when you open your mouth. If it's not in the Bible and what you're saying is not in the Bible, so it can't be the Word of God. Well, they're saying for thousands and thousands of years, God spoke to mankind nonstop through the prophets and through the angels and all of that. It's constant all the way through the Old Testament. The New Testament is all about God speaking to humanity. So apparently, 2,000 years ago, he stopped and hasn't uttered one word since, because the Bible was 2,000 years ago. Not one word has been added since. More than that, the Bible itself have no script or person before thee. There was no Bible created at the time. Man put together the Bible over time since, with their interpretations and their structures going into it. The King James Version, everybody believes that God spoke in these and thous and wherefore art thou and so on, God language. But that was Elizabethan English of the 15th century, 16th century, because King James Version of the Bible was written as a book for the man in the street so they could understand the Bible. It was the language of the day which Queen Elizabeth spoke, Sir Walter Raleigh spoke, Shakespeare spoke. It was the language of the day. So again, if it's not in the Bible, it can't be the Word of God. Well, look what they're doing. They're cutting themselves off from everything that's going on today. And there's a huge problem. It's constant. Creation is always expanding. Every tick of the clock is this expansion from the tick before. It's constantly expanding. That's a really, really big condition that these religious people have to get out of. And they were, the Illuminatis and the guys we were joking about, your finger stickless, so on, they're holding man in consciousness like that, because as long as they hold man back into a stunted level of consciousness, they can't expand. And because don't forget, the ultimate success of the expansion consciousness of everybody is all those guys are gone. They're not taken out of the picture. They're just, they are no longer the demigods and the bigwigs that they think they are. They're just bring me back to normal Christ triune beings doing their work. They've got to. At the end of the show, if you go through 2,500 planets and you still haven't waken up enough to be able to incarnate back into the fifth, you prove by the fact you can't. By the very fact that you can't, you're sent back to the 16th dimension, to the absolute lake of fire and intelligence, and your whole acquired outer something is burned off. This is the eternal fire, the lake of eternal fire that they talk about. And you're expressed as a clean new soul atom, a new personality, a new endowment, everything's given, and you're back out as a refurbished new atom. And there's been 6 Black Masters of Atlantis have been sent back to creation to sources. Help. What I'm trying to say, the heart and center of creation for that. The rest of all of those native guys out of Atlantis and out of the early Luciferian, they've all incarnated now. So it's really well on its way to being. We're a long, long way to go before it's all cleaned up, but we're well along the way of it starting to be cleaned up.
Nice.
Simple.
All righty. Well, thanks, Frank. Well, let's get Brian. I want to get a chance to get you in here too before we run out of time and all that. So, Brian, what are your thoughts? What are your do you have anything? How you sort of started getting interested in all this, and maybe any questions for Del as well? But maybe we can talk about a little bit about your experience as well with this.
Yeah. I don't know how I found Del. It just worked out that way. It's just like seeing those clouds in the sky. I don't know how I started to see them.
And also the ships are guiding people to, you get the thought, you do it. You get the thought, you don't do it. They're guiding. But that's intuition gets you there. You got there by intuition.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
because you were ready. You don't get there if you're not ready. You can't get there if you're not ready because you won't follow your intuition. But you got there because you're ready. That's all.
Yeah, I was just riding around on my motorcycle in the country, and there would be a cloud, and I would just stop and take a picture of it. I'm like, wow. And then there was one that followed me on the train. I was on the locomotive driving from Calgary to Medicine Hat, and there was this one that looked like a caterpillar. Just a long, skinny, like a popsicle stick with all these hairs off of it. And I looked at it, and like every 3 miles, I'd stick my head out the window and look up, and there it was. And an hour later, I'm 60 miles away, and I'm in Medicine Hat getting off the train, and I'm looking up, and there it is right above me.
Remember I told you the cloud followed the people out from Denver and then went back with them? Yeah. Well, you had a cloud following you out of Calgary when that happens, when that kind of thing happens. So.
That same cloud is in Dell's book. The same one.
Yeah, I put it up there.
Yeah, and I see you got another photograph in there, Dell, as well now. But yeah, I don't know.
But you've had some experiences going way back though, right? That you've been pretty open to this for a while. So.
Well, yeah, for a long time, yeah, and even geomancing, affecting the weather when you're riding on your bike. Please don't rain on me, and all of a sudden it stops and stuff like that. That goes on too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and you've got some Oregon busters, some chem busters in your yard as well. We were talking about last time.
Yeah, see, Dell's buddy Zurinov, he made
Zurinova Star, same as Delanova Star, but Zurinova Star. Zurinova, actually, I'm wrong. It's Zurinova Star.
Yeah, so I was trying to hunt him down, and I went to a couple of psychics, and they said, you will meet this man eventually, and sure enough, I did. Anyway, I got him to make a number of these chem busters for me, and they're sitting around in different parts of the country here, neutralizing the negative orgone energy and creating positive stuff, and these clouds seem to like it too. They're showing up over and over and over again. And like just in the last, since I haven't talked to Dell for about a month, but in that month I've got, 4 different episodes of these same clouds. And one of them goes to the east side of the horizon and all the way to the west. So I took a little video of it.
That's the anchor ships, the pair, that's setting up the magnetic field.
So I don't know if things are heating up or I'm getting more sensitive or they know that I'm here and they're showing themselves to me or I don't know what's going down. But
actually, April of 2015, there was a huge, the push setting is on. There was stuff showing up all the time. But from that time on, it's like, all right, folks, it's on. We're here now. We're serious. It was April of 2015. And from that point on, there's ships all the time, everywhere, all the time.
And the CE5 stuff is ramped right up. You just go outside and you put your attention up there and you're seeing the flash bulbs showing up. Yeah, I'm really enjoying that. And that falling meteor right there the other day that we all saw from Alberta to Saskatchewan, that traveled across the sky, it took 8 seconds to go across the horizon. That was pretty cool too.
You seen that?
Yeah, you just got to go outside.
Yeah, Brian saw that with a guy delivering pizza at the time or something, right, Brian?
Yeah, I was having a fire at this buddy's place, and the pizza guy was walking up with the pizza, and we yelled at him, "Turn around and look!" And all 3 of us watched this thing for 8 seconds. Yeah, it was really quite spectacular. I've seen all kinds of junk. I ran locomotives for 36 years. I was up all night, most nights, every night. We were always working. I've seen a lot of stuff falling from the skies. But that one, it was just so slow. If you saw a jet moving across the sky going really slow, you'd say that's unusual, right? Well, this was unusual, too.
So what did they say? What did they say that was? That was a meteor or space junk or something like that?
They said it was an engine falling back from a previous space jump.
Boy, just imagine how lucky we've been that one of those things hasn't landed in the middle of New York or something. So far.
Yeah.
And I've seen 3 UFOs. Can't deny what I've seen with witnesses. Yeah. There's stuff everywhere along with the Sasquatch and Yeah, it just keeps on getting better and better.
Yeah.
I'm pretty happy
When
to
are
be
you to come
alive
to the
here.
igloo, Brian? You're just up the road.
Yeah.
Yeah, next time we come out, we'll go up for Seaside. You got to drop by the igloo, and we'll do a little show in person.
I'm not allowed on the Sea City, but I'll see you off.
Hideaway.
Yeah, same.
These guys aren't
I'd
allowed in
like
the
to do
Seaside
that.
yet.
I'll comment in here. It's an interesting thing about people that have seen UFOs and so on. If you hadn't seen one, you think that whoever says that they've seen one is probably nuts.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I saw it. I didn't tell the story of the third one I saw, but that doesn't need to be said. But anyway, until they see one themselves, once you see one, you can't say you didn't.
Yeah.
Once you've seen one, you can't say you didn't. And that's going to be happening more and more. That we got off a little bit on the idea. If you ask about the tin pots, that's a euphemism. I've coined the term. I didn't coin it. It was coined in the early 70s. The idea of calling them tin pots. These are when the Luciferians got going. They ran around the same way with radionic ships in their environments, the third dimension, and in the fifth when they didn't have a third dimension planet. But they modified the original radionic blueprint so that these ships could be brought down and manifest in the third dimension. So you can get radionic ships on the negative side in the third dimension. You throw a baseball and it'll bounce off them, right? The thing about these ships now is that everybody says, I saw a ship with flashing lights, and you could hear a distinct whop, 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 whop sound as it went by, And I'm being slightly sarcastic there. But if you see flashing lights on a ship, it's man-made, because no matter how Luciferian they are or where they're from, they didn't come all the way here and need flashing lights to show you where they're going or to show themselves where they're going. If there's flashing lights, they're man-made. If you get light flares, because they will flash off astral light, if you get flares coming off them, then that's a tin pot.
You mean like strobes or flares, like a strobe?
Well,
sort of?
like a flash of ray, red comes off up there, and then a yellow off down there, and then flares come flashing off them. You'll see flares come flashing off them. That's a radionic ship, even a corrupted one. But if it's a flashing light, blip, 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 that's man-made, flat out, because up there they don't have flashing lights. The fifth dimension doesn't need flashing lights, And the thing about the tin pots, see, they were coming and going all over the place here up until 2,000 years ago. And like I said, there's 25,000 planets, 2,500 planets that have a third dimension like Earth, and 90% of them are in a higher state of. And Terry's right now is almost at the top end of the fourth dimension. They're right at the very top. They're ready to make the jump up into the fifth. Please, it's quite a ways up the ladder and so on. And these guys, they're still working out of a third dimensional point of view because they were in the inside of a Luciferian ontology rather than a true cosmic cause one. And they could see that Earth was at a certain level of. See, everybody thinks that molecules jumped out of the ocean, started running around, got bigger, got fur, now got a brain, and now they're ready to join the galactic community. Well, nothing like that ever happened. There's no planet ever generates a population of people. Root races are brought to the planet to have a cycle of evolution experience. In the frequencies of the planet, it moves on. The next root race brought it. Earth has had 12 root races. The first root race was 250 million years ago, the Chakotayans, and Jesus and Mary were the first Chakotayans to finish that cycle in preparation for 2,000 years ago. That's been a long time in the making, that thing 2,000 years ago. But the last of the last, when a root race contingent comes like to Earth, they're housed in the sun, and in Earth's case, because every planet it varies according to the frequencies, but in Earth, in contingents of 10 billion each, would come to the Earth and then go through a cycle of incarnations through the physical plane, then the astral plane, then the physical plane, and so on, until they're finished, move on to the next one. When I say astral planes, that's wrong, because it's all done in the fifth dimension. What happened is that the last contingent of the last root race, which are the Adamics, this last root race is the Adamics, which are all the Asians on the planet. All the Asians on the planet collectively are the Adamic root race. The planet belongs to them. That's why China is starting to come to the fore now in this big change taking place, because the planet does belong to those guys. I mean, all the Asians. They're the root race, proper root race of the planet. The last of the root race was Adamic. The last contingent to come out of the sun on Earth 3.5 million years ago got trapped in the third dimension, and it cut everything off. It can't go that way anymore because Earth has to be able to make its transportation to Orion on time. Not Orion, yeah, the womb of Orion on time. The step through to the new super universe has to take place correctly. All of this stuff was backlogged to a point now where it can't be backlogged any longer. But because of all of these energies that are confluing right now for these processes to take place, this was the time that was decided, all right, let's bring this whole thing to a head right here now, clean it all up once and get it started once and for all. So that's why there's so many of the heavenly hosts here right now, because this is, I don't know how to
well, it's I think what you're saying is it's the quickening, like Art Bell used to coin that phrase way back.
Yeah, well, this is the quickening is a good way to put it, because it's certainly going to be, because we're just now it's going to accelerate up for about when a new dispensation comes in, like of course you get a burst or a peak of frequencies at the beginning of it, and then it'll taper off for the 1,000 years. Then you get another spike halfway through, and then like Atlantis 2,000 years ago or 10,000 years ago was the halfway point of the last 25,000 years. So. Anyway, just to finish, there's if I can get the train of thought here. So, we're going to see about another 80 or 90 years of things going up, and then it's going to taper off. For the next 800-900 years, it's going to be very quiet. It's input. It's going to be very quiet. And then we'll have a spike, and then we'll have 1,000 years of output. The last 500 years is when it accelerates, the same as we did from the 500 years ago to now. In the Aries dispensation, the golden age of Greece, all of that stuff up until it's the same idea. The last 500 years are the output where everything accelerates and comes out. So,
right on.
So we're right now going up into the peak. But another 60, 80, about 80, 90 years more of the peak. Now there's a flying saucer.
Yeah. That's my model. That's the sport model. Yeah. So Del, why don't you mention? We got a delay here in the studio. Why don't you mention how, again, just for people how they can buy your books and stuff like.
Oh, sure.
And,
okay.
Well, and a little bit about your website, and then we'll wrap this thing up.
The three websites. Oh, you were going to show a better view of the books, or is that already done?
Oh, we did that already. Yeah.
Do it again.
Yeah, do it again. Yeah, throw it again.
All right. Well, now let me see. Yeah, there we go. There. Okay. Yeah. The three books are the Intelligent Design and Creation is Volume 1. The second book is called the Revelatorium of Alpha and Omega. And then the third book, which is the newer, is called the Radionic Ships of the Heavenly Host. The first book, Intelligent Design and Creation, is on your website as is, called designofcreation.com. The second book, Radionic Revelatorium of Alpha and Omega, is simply revelatorium.com. You can Google these names. If you don't spell them right, Google will correct the spelling for you. Okay. So revelatorium.com. Then the third one is the Radionic Ships of the Heavenly Host, and it's simply radionicships.com. That's RADIONICS ships.com.
Okay, and I'm going to link to all that in the show notes as well for people. So.
Okay, and then all three are for sale on Amazon. I have a web page up called neared.com, NEARED, neared.com, and I have the links to buy the books on that page.
Okay.
What was the GoFundMe again?
And then GoFundMe. This is a bit trickier. GoFundMe. So it's one of the crowdfunding sites. GoFundMe.com, then a / the word I think it has a capital T, then a hyphen, Radionic, then a hyphen, ships, hyphen, of, hyphen, light, hyphen.
Okay.
Now again,
Graham will track it down and put the link in the show notes.
For sure. Yeah.
I'll send you the link in an email after the thing. I'll just punch it into text and send it to you. Now, the GoFundMe, if you can chip in, the little chip-ins, I call them little chips-ins. They have 50-some. One of them was 100. I even had one for 200. It accumulated for $80. But they bought business cards. They bought software that I needed. I mean, they do a humongous amount of work. Right now, I have a software I can't buy. Right now, I can't, I've got quite a few things sitting, waiting, So anything that you can put into the GoFundMe will help. The big job right now is to get a lump sum up enough to be able to do the bulk printing. I want to be able to print 1,000, minimum order of 1,000. You can't print less than that in bulk printing. They won't even set up the prices.
Yeah, you're just really wanting to try and get this out, right?
Yeah. As I say, the input stage is all but finished. It's now time for the output stage, and output stage means putting into your hands. So
right on. We'll link to all that in the show notes, and
we'll spread it as far as we can.
And when you come to Calgary, and if you guys are together or even separate, just swing by.
There's another trip.
Yeah.
I'm going to see you before we get to Calgary. We'll stop and see Brian and I have been talking. I've got friends like Brian. You in Calgary. I've got a friend in Nanaimo. I got another friend in Ladysmith on the island, and I've got my friend Zeranova in the middle of BC, and my family, brothers and sisters, all live in the Vancouver area. So I've got quite a trip. Now all I need is the money to make the trip.
Exactly.
So I'm looking towards the spring or the summer. I'm going to try and make that happen no matter what.
Nice. Right on.
Yep.
We'll be here when you do. And we did get, I just should mention, we did get quite a few compliments on the mustache in the chat, Brian.
Oh, cool. Thanks.
Oh, the handlebars. Yeah, that's there's not too many of those around anymore. Ever since Prince, whatever his name, the fifth passed.
I sell chicken.
Prince Albert. That was it. Prince Albert. Yeah, when he passed, their mustache went out of style.
Yeah. Well, thanks for joining us again, Brian. It's good to have you as well.
Yeah. Thanks, Graham. Aaron, Del.
Yeah. Look forward to catching up with you in person one of these days.
Yeah. Well, we're going to make it happen somehow. So.
All right, guys.
Well, all right. That's this is great.
Big thanks for coming on the show, and it's going to be live on YouTube already, and it'll be there for as long as YouTube's around, which is probably longer than us.
Until the EMP hits.
Yeah, that's right. And we'll send you a link to the audio episode when it pops. In a couple
the audio
weeks.
episode will be out in a little while, in a few weeks. Yeah.
January.
Is there going to be a link that I can get to the video?
Yeah.
Because I have 3 or 4 people waiting to have a look at it.
Sure.
Yep,
For sure.
Graham will send it over to you for sure.
Yeah. Well, nice going.
Good work, guys.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah,
Thank
if we
you,
don't
Brian.
talk to you, have a good Christmas, all that.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody.
Bye-bye.
Yeah. May your Christ radiance benefit everybody.
All right, perfect.
There you go.
Perfect.
All right.
Thanks.
There we are. Thank you.
Okay.
There you have it, and that was our chat with...
We're not doing the outro, are we?
Yeah, of course we are. Brian and Del. It was a fun one. We finally worked it out this time. We got the video to work.
Yeah.
All that fun
Sharing
stuff.
the slides. Yeah, there's 600 and something pictures on his website, so check